think one thing that people would not expect is that my PhD is actually in archaeology. I'd never considered such a thing and was probably one of the youngest people there. And I was hooked about the power of leadership, both for good and for bad.
A lot of times the leaders think they're doing the right thing and their culture didn't end up the way that they really wanted.
You have what you tolerate. If you don't like what you have, you change what you tolerate. And I mentioned this earlier. This is one of the key things about a toxic workplace. And I don't trust that you have competency to do what I need you to do.
What would you do in that case where I don't trust you that you're going to do a good job in that role that you're in versus I don't trust you as a person?
Number one problem we see with remote employees is that they feel disconnected from the rest of the team. No high performer wants to be on a team that is sliding and compromising toward mediocrity. If they see that happening and they see that's the direction you're going as the leader, they're going to leave.
Other leaders are probably saying, John, but how do I know that this person is a good fit? And I always tell them, well, do you have core values? All right. Welcome to the Go Accomplish More podcast, where we interview successful individuals that are doing great things in their business and in their personal life. And today we have a guest, William Attaway. He is the CEO of Appreciation at Work. He's an executive coach, a leadership expert, and the host of the Catalytic Leadership podcast. William has dedicated his life to helping leaders build cultures where people feel valued, seen, and engaged. He brings a rare blend of leadership, real coach experience, and deep pastoral wisdom. Super excited to have him on our show today. William, welcome to the show.
John, thank you so much for having me, man. It's just an honor to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, we're going to be talking about great things. And I want to just start off by, how are things going in your end right now?
I'll tell you, I just started this new role with Appreciation at Work. And so, we acquired this company as of November the 1st.
Oh.
So as we were recording this, that was just over a month ago. So, I'm deep in it right now. It's a really great organization with a great team. And we have the opportunity to serve a whole lot of people with something that I believe makes a difference.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of Gary Chapman. I've read his The 5 Love Languages. I know that's probably his major popular book, but I haven't read his new one. So I am interested in diving in and learning more about that other book that he wrote. But super excited about that as well. So yeah, let's start off. I mean, you wear many hats, right? You're CEO, you're an executive coach, you're a pastor. What's something people wouldn't expect about you from looking at your resume, right? You're doing so many things.
I think one thing that people would not expect is that my PhD is actually in archaeology and biblical backgrounds. And so I've spent a good bit of time digging in the dirt. We spent some time working for a couple of seasons over at a dig site in Jordan called Tal El Hammam, which after 15 seasons of excavation, the team believes that this is the site of the city of Sodom.
All right. And I see that you've probably done a lot of research and you've read a lot about this already.
I have indeed. I have indeed. Way more than anybody would want to listen to me talk about. But that's something not a lot of people know. That archaeology is the area of primary study for me. But it's so fascinating how God never wastes an experience. And how, a study of archaeology, which is really about revealing what lies beneath, has so many parallels to what I do as a coach, helping to uncover what is there, helping people to see what they may never have seen before. And what we do now at Appreciation at Work, which is helping people to understand the value and the power of appreciation in building a healthy and sustainable culture.
That's so good. That's so good. Like, I know back many years ago, I went to Israel and went to the different sites where Jesus walked, and I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Where they've done all these studies on many things, and it's nice that you're doing that as well. That's pretty cool.
I think once you go and you see the places where Jesus walked, you experience them firsthand like that, it really changes the way that you read the biblical text. It really makes it 3D.
100%. So listen, I want to talk a little bit about your personal journey and turning points. You're a type of person that you're a giver. Like, ever since I met you, it seems like you love to help people, and you spend your life helping people, right? Feel valued and seen. What led you into leadership development and cultural transformation in the first place?
I'm a third generation entrepreneur. So I grew up watching my grandfather build the business that he ultimately sold and provided for he and my grandmother for the rest of their lives. I grew up watching my dad build a very different business, advertising agency, actually.
Nice.
Starting in the 70s. He ran for 40 plus years. And so, watching them and how they led their businesses, their teams, certainly had an incredibly formative influence on me. When I was 15 years old, I had a high school teacher who invited me to attend my first leadership conference. I had never considered such a thing and was probably one of the youngest people there. But he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I went and I listened and I learned and I was hooked about the power of leadership, both for good and for bad, and how the influence that a leader has is something that can be developed and stewarded well. And that's what I've spent the last, going on 40 years now, learning about and teaching and writing about.
And you know what the funny thing is, that sometimes there's other people that give you permission to be successful. They see something different, right? And that happened to me in my life too. They said, John, you're going to do something great, right? Yeah. And I didn't believe it, right? And you're like, yeah, one day you're going to open up a business and you're going to be helping people. And I didn't see it. Do you think that happens to a lot of people, that they don't see the potential in themselves?
It is very, very difficult to see the whole picture when you're in the frame. That's why an outside perspective is so important. And I believe this is the power of a great coach, somebody who will help you see what you can't see because they're looking from a different perspective, who will help you grow in your self-awareness and understanding of not just who you are, but of who you can be.
That's so good. That's so good. And let me ask you, do you think, since you have a background as a pastor, do you think that has shaped your leadership philosophy and the way you relate to people, the way you handle situations? Like, can you share an example on how that background has allowed you to be the leader that you are today?
I would say that every leadership principle that I teach, write about, talk about, every single one is rooted in Scripture.
So good.
And if I'm speaking to an audience of people who are not people of faith, they don't know where this is coming from so often. But what I have the opportunity to do is talk with them and help them to see that connection and understand the wisdom here is not from me. The wisdom here is not rooted in me and what I've learned and the things that I can tell you about, but it's much, much deeper than that. I think that foundation of, almost 30 years serving as a local church pastor, has really helped me to understand people better and speak into the actual pain points and issues and challenges that they're dealing with. Doing that week in, week out, as you preach sermons, as you write every week, trying to intersect people's lives with, truth from God that is timeless, really prepares you to begin to look at the world through that lens. And so I think, whether it's my work, with the company now, with Appreciation at Work or as a coach, it doesn't matter because it's all about people. What I believe so strongly to the core of my being is that if you look at how Jesus treated people, you see he elevated and treated people with kindness, with respect, and with love. He saw the value of the individual. And even in places and with people that the rest of culture and society in that day did not. He elevated not just men, but women, not just Jews, but Gentiles, not just wealthy, but the poor. He elevated and gave respect and dignity. And I think that is such a model for each one of us and how we deal with other people. It's easy for us to box and say, well, they're not like me. They don't think like me or act like me or vote like me or whatever you want to say. It's easy for us to box people and begin to treat them differently. And I think if we look at the pattern that Jesus set, we see something very, very different. And so I would say that has informed my work in all these other spheres, probably more than anything else.
Most leaders, like especially pastors, they should be people persons. They definitely need to love people, right? Yeah. Just like Jesus loved people. And I think the fact that you had that background will allow you to understand people more, understand their, how they view the world sometimes. Because sometimes it's hard, right? To put the lens on how the other person is thinking. Like, why do they think a certain way? Why they're acting a certain way? So having that compassion and understand that you have to empathize into why they're saying or why they're feeling a certain way. Which I want to bring up is culture. I want to bring up now, which most agencies are hearing this podcast and they're building a culture, or if you have a business, you're hearing this and they're probably saying, man, my culture is not the way that I want it to be, right? And a lot of times the leaders think they're doing the right thing, and then they have a team of 5, 10, 20 people, and their culture didn't end up the way that they really wanted the culture to be, right? What do you think is the biggest culprit of a toxic culture? Let's say we'll start off with the toxic culture first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a lack of trust. You know, culture at its root is really about the beliefs that you have about yourself and about other people, the attitudes that you have about yourself and about other people, and the behaviors that everybody are habitually performing. We've got to be very mindful of this. You know, every team, every company, every agency has a culture. You either have one you designed on purpose and you protect, or you have one you didn't mean to have, but you have a culture, right? and the key thing to understand, if you're looking at your culture and saying, oh, this is not really what I meant to have, you have the ability to change it. You have what you tolerate. If you don't like what you have, you change what you tolerate. And so what I want to challenge every one of your listeners with is, you may be looking at something and say, man, if I could go back and redesign that, I would. Great. You can. You have the ability. You get to choose. You can choose to change your culture. Now, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a week, but it will and can happen.
When a team feels disconnected, right? There's a lot of agencies or businesses here that have a lot of team members working remotely, and there's certain agencies that do have a physical office as well. And I think having a physical office makes it a little bit easier, I would say, like when you're building a culture, because you actually rub shoulders, you can see the person. Right. But I think the most difficult thing is, as well as a leader, is how do you build a really good culture when everyone is remote?
I would say the first thing you want to look for is the trust issue. And I mentioned this earlier. This is one of the key things about a toxic workplace. There's a lack of trust, not just one direction either. It's around the organization. I don't trust that you have competency to do what I need you to do. I don't trust that you're consistent and will do consistently with excellence. I don't trust that you have the character to do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. When you lack trust in those three areas, what happened, or more than one of those three areas, what happens is that you begin to affect the culture in a very negative way. It begins to dip. And that can be addressed, and it can and should be addressed. But you got to be mindful of that. You got to watch for the signs that trust is dipping. How do you rebuild it? Well, you talk about character, you talk about consistency, right? And it's not just things you talk about. You call it out when you see it. You celebrate those wins when you see them happening. Say, hey, man, you did this. You stepped up. That's one of our cultural values here. I'm so proud of you. Well done. Way to go. You do it publicly so everybody sees it. You raise the bar. Now, when it comes to remote team members, that is even more important. Because like you say, when you're in person, you can have those water cooler conversations, right? You can talk about things kind of off the record. It's a little harder to do when you're remote, because everything feels like when you're on a Zoom call, you need to get to business, need to get to work, need to get it done. You've got to be intentional about building rapport, building relationship, because you want to make sure that they feel connected. Number one problem we see with remote employees, remote team members, is that they feel disconnected from the rest of the team. That's a solvable problem. And one of the ways that we do that is we do one-on-ones with each of our direct reports every week, right? We also do team meetings. Everybody's on the call. Everybody's in the Zoom room, so to speak. Everybody's a part. And we want to make sure that everybody's included. So if we're asking a question, I'm going to call out some of those remote team members because I want to make sure they feel like they're a part of what's happening. That is key. It is very easy to let that drift into an unhealthy direction over time if you're not intentional about it.
And let me ask you, I mean, how do you balance out, like, I'm putting myself also as a leader, you know, like sometimes you'll have certain individuals that you realize after a year that they might not have the capacity, let's say on whatever role they're in at the moment. How do you balance, like, you know, you might not trust that person, not as a like in a personal level, but more in their capability. Like, what would you do in that case where it doesn't seem like you're letting that team member know, hey, I don't trust you that you're going to do a good job in that role that you're in, versus I don't trust you as a person. Like, how do you, like, what would you do to fix that? Like, would it be maybe he's in the wrong seat, or maybe you want to move him to somewhere else, so you start so that person feels you actually trust him 1000% in everything, versus just that area of his expertise and what he's doing, right? His role. Does that make sense?
100%. That really gets around the question around competency when it comes to trust. If you do not trust somebody's competency, that's going to affect everything. Now, just because you don't trust their competency in one area doesn't mean you don't value them as a person.
Right.
Right? If I came to you and said, hey, John, I would love to work on the transmission on your car. You should not trust me with that. Okay? I have no competency at all, right? Dealing with anything under the hood of a car. I have no competency there. And so you should not trust me there because I haven't exhibited a consistent pattern of competent behavior. If you have somebody on your team who is exhibiting a lack of competence, maybe they're in the wrong seat on the bus.
Exactly.
Use Colin's terminology. Great. Have the conversation. Hey, seems like you're struggling here. What's going on? I'm going to ask questions like that. Help me understand. It feels like this is the standard we're looking for, and this is your performance. Like, there's a gap here. Like, what is your plan to close that gap? Have the conversation. Talk about the gap. Do not let this be a surprise to anybody, right? If you get to a point where you understand this is not in their wheelhouse, this is not their gifting or their skill set, call it out. Be honest. Clarity is kindness. Like Brene Brown says, clarity is kindness. It is not being nice that is the goal. It's being kind. Niceness is not a fruit of the spirit. Kindness is. And clarity is how you get there. I want to be clear with a team member and say, look, this isn't working. If I value this person enough to want them to stay on the bus, then I'm going to try to help them find another seat. Sometimes there's not another seat or they're not the right person. The kindest thing you can do is be honest about that and free them up to find a good fit. We think that by being nice and not calling it out and letting them, giving them another shot, giving them another chance over and over and over again, we think we're being nice. We think we're being kind. We're not. We're actually doing a very unkind thing because we're holding them in a position that is not a good fit for them. That does not serve them well. It does not serve the company and the rest of your team well. You've got to think about what's best for your team, for your clients, the customers that you serve. You cannot get trapped into avoiding difficult conversations because you think it's the nice thing to do. That's something I see a lot.
Yeah, no, and totally. And I think that it makes it more difficult too when you do have a team and you do have an individual that's been with you for many years, right? Like right now, we're actually doing the EOS, right, structure. And EOS teaches that they need to get it, they need to want it, and they need to have the capacity for it, right? So you might have a team member, right? Would you agree that wants it, they kind of get it, but they don't have the capacity for it. And that's where you have to step in and say, hey, listen, I love you, but I think you're going to shine better in this other role. Would you say that that's probably one of the hardest things for a leader once they see individuals that have been with them for many years? You think that that happens a lot in the workplace?
I do. And I think we tolerate mediocrity and allow people to operate outside of their giftedness. And I think the hidden cost that a lot of people miss is the fact that the high performers on your team are watching and listening to what you tolerate. No high performer wants to be on a team that is sliding and compromising toward mediocrity. If they see that happening and they see that's the direction you're going as the leader, they're going to leave. You're going to lose your high performers because you have tolerated behaviors that are not consistent with what you say.
Yeah. And I think that how you can also gauge it is this person following the core values, or does this person have what the core values teaches as well? Because that person may have everything, but the only thing is that he doesn't have the capacity, which that makes it harder. But other leaders are probably saying, John, but how do I know that this person is a good fit, right? I just don't want to create this toxic environment, or I don't want to create a culture. And I always tell them, well, do you have core values? Are you hiring based from your core values? Like, can you talk a little bit about how important core values are in a team?
If you are not talking about your values at every team meeting, something's wrong. And the reason I say that is not because you just keep beating it until everybody gets it. It's because what you reward with your attention is what gets repeated. The cultural values or the core values of what you want to build and how you want to build it is something that everybody needs to know and everybody needs to buy into. And the ones who don't, that needs to be very obvious and evident so they can self-select out. Or if necessary, you can help them make that choice. The goal here is that there is no question around what matters most. There is no question around what a win is here. I was talking with somebody earlier who said that they were talking to their team and they said, okay, so everybody knows what the number one priority, what the number one win is here, right? And somebody said, yeah, it's this. And he's like, no, that's not it at all. That's like number 3. And he realized that you have to give number 1 and you have to do it regularly and consistently, repeatedly, over and over again before people are going to absorb it. Do they get it? Do they understand it? Are they capable of it? That's a different question. And sometimes they're not. And that's okay. Sometimes they need to be developed and they can be. Great. Then let's pour some time and energy and effort into that. But sometimes it's just not a good fit. And all we do by holding on is we hold them back.
You know, another thing we started doing as a company as well is that our ops manager was sending out like a survey every single week to all the team members. And it was just like a morale check to see how they were doing. And they would, because a lot of times, like, it doesn't always have to be a capacity issue. It could be something like they're having a bad day in their personal life, right? And that's going to translate on how their work is affected. So it's very important as a leader, especially if you're working remotely. It's very important as well to catch how they're acting right in front of the camera, or if they're not as, so much engaged, right? And these little surveys help us because it will actually, like, we tell them, hey, be honest, like, how has your day been? And it's a simple survey, like a 10-question survey. What are some other tips to know, like, to kind of keep a pulse of how your team is doing, not only on how they're performing, but in regards to their personal life and all that? Would you say having one-on-ones, I know you said that earlier, is there any other tips that come to mind when it comes to just having a pulse?
I would say listening is one of a leader's most powerful tools that I find is not really utilized as much as it should be. We have the opportunity through the skill of listening to listen not just to the words that are being said, but to how they're being said, to what's underneath the words that are being said. The questions that we ask can indicate a deeper sense of listening. And what I would challenge leaders to do and agency owners as they're working with their teams is to understand you have the ability to help these folks know that they are cared about, that they're valued beyond just what they do. You don't see them as a cog in the machine who does a task. You see them as an actual 3D human being. And when you treat people like that and you ask questions and you value them as a person, what I find is that team members lean in. This increases retention and it drops team churn. And for the agency owners who are listening to this, that's going to be reflected on your bottom line, because churn among your team members is almost always reflected in churn with your clients.
Absolutely. And I believe it always points to the leader. Like, I always, like, I tell my kids, like, if we're at a restaurant or we go to a Subway and we're ordering and the person in the front is super rude, or usually he learned that from the leader. That's
right.
Or he's having a bad day. It could be one of those outliers. He could be having a horrible day. But usually if you do see some behavior patterns within 1 or 2 or 3 people, usually it's because the main leader hasn't addressed it, or that leader does the same thing, right? So it's very important to be showing up as a leader, I think is crucial. Because, right? It's very important.
You have what you tolerate. If you 100%. See that kind of behavior with a team member, it's because the leader's tolerating it. Oh,
good stuff. I mean, I can talk all day about culture. I think it's important and it's so crucial for an agency to have a great culture if they definitely want to grow. Let's turn gears a little bit now and talk a little bit about mindset and faith. I know that you're a believer. You talk a lot about leaders being catalysts, right? What does that mean to you on a deeper level?
When I went to college, I actually went as a pharmacy major, and I got into my second year of pre-pharmacy and got to organic chemistry, and that's designed as a washout point to wash out people who have no business going into pharmacy, and it works really well because it washed me right out. In my brief chemistry studies, though, I discovered the power of what's called a catalyst. A catalyst is something that you introduce into a mixture in order to incite or to accelerate significant change. As I thought about that, I thought about so many of the leaders that I had been reading about, studying about, even some that I had worked for. And I thought, and every great leader that I can think of would resonate with that definition. This idea of being a catalyst to incite or to accelerate significant change that so often is not reversible. Wow, that's great. That's fantastic. To me, being a catalyst is that. It's somebody who's going to inspire and challenge other people to change. To change that makes significant difference. That's what I have aspired to be. And that comes from my faith. It comes from who I believe God wired and created me to be. Not just to sit and soak and sour, but to take what has been entrusted to me and share that with other people. Not just to be a reservoir of what I've learned and my experiences, but to be a conduit of that. So other people can learn and take those learnings even farther. When I see a client of mine who is like taking what we've been talking about, taking what I've shared with them, and they're taking it even farther, man, I cheer that on. I'm celebrating that because that is the win for me. When they win, I win. I love that. So for me, it all comes down to what is it that God wired me to do? How did he create me?
That's so good. And there's a verse that says, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? And you can yes. grab that from anything, right? I mean,
that's right.
The bad things, the good things. And I think that you can also take in is like garbage in, garbage out, right? Or if you're right. somewhat, I'm doing 100%. My own version, right?
100%.
So the goal here is that if we're not educating ourselves, right? If we're not pouring into ourselves, then how can we pour out to people, right? We're going to be empty, right? And if we're just pouring in and not pouring out, then we're just going to be obese people, right?
That's right.
Right? And the goal here is that definitely we need to be a conduit and helping others with what God has given us, right? And yeah. I think that's so good.
You can't pour out of an empty pitcher.
100%.
And too many believers are so focused on other people and what other people are doing and what other people are experiencing that they're not taking the time to fill their cup so that they can then share it with others. Conversely, this results in what I call bobbleheads, right? People who just keep growing, their heads get bigger and bigger and bigger, but their body never moves, right? They're not acting on what they're learning. What good is that to anybody?
What comes to mind now, I'm going to change it a little bit, is as you start developing yourself as a leader, you start growing. I believe when a leader grows, it's going to affect everyone around them. It's going to affect their relationship. It's going to affect their income. They're going to be growing in all the areas in their life, right? And then we talk about freedom right now, right? Because a lot of times that's what we're shooting for. I mean, I would say most people are shooting for freedom. So what does freedom look like for you as a leader, as a husband, and as a pastor?
I think freedom for me looks like the ability to be who it is that God wired and designed me to be, and kind of keying back on that. So, there are certain aspects of who I am that are kind of hardwired into me. If you look at me on a Myers-Briggs profile, I'm an ISTJ, right? And I'm pretty consistent with that, right? If you look at me on a DISC profile, I'm a high C. What do those things mean? Well, accuracy matters to me. I'm very analytical. I'm always analyzing the data. I think data tells a story. It may not tell the story you want to hear, but it's telling a story. And by analyzing the data, we learn so much. I say all that to say that's how God wired me. I don't have to work at that. I don't have to work at learning because that's how God created me to be. And I think freedom is creating a life where you're able to live that out. And one of the joys that I have is the ability as an entrepreneur to build a business that allows me to live that out according to how I'm wired, not how somebody else thinks I should be.
So good. So good. So I want to ask you just what's one piece of advice you leave for leaders who want to go accomplish more in their life, not just in business, but in life?
Change is a choice. I think this is something that is often forgotten, including by the guy in the mirror, I'll say. That we have the ability to choose to change.
Mm.
I find too many people are trapped by the mindset that they are a victim of their circumstances, of their past, their history, other people, that they are a victim of those things, and that has trapped them and they're never able to change anything. I think you get to choose. I think I get to choose. And I get to choose my mindset. Your mindset is 90% of your success or your failure.
Mm.
You choose your mindset. Every day I get to choose. And every day I get up and I choose a teachable spirit. I want to be the most teachable person in the room. I want to be listening. I want to be asking questions and learning with the conversations that I get to have. And what that means is that I'm listening, I'm learning, not just because I want that to be the appearance, but because that's who I am. That's how I'm wired. You get to choose that. And I would challenge your listeners, just like I would challenge myself. Make that choice every day. Understand you get to choose. You choose your mindset, and that determines so much.
So good. So good. Well, William, we're going to do a lightning round. I'm just going to ask you just 4 questions. And then after that, we're going to wrap it up. So whatever's in your mind, just shoot it, right?
Okay, let's do it.
All right, let's go. So one habit or rhythm that keeps you grounded.
Every morning, you can't see it on camera here, but I have a chair right here by the window. Every morning, that's where I start my day. And that's when I'm spending time in scripture. I'm spending time in prayer and meditation, and I'm listening and reminding myself of what matters most in my life. My faith in my Heavenly Father, my relationship with my wife and with my daughters, and everything else comes after that.
That's so good. Okay, if you had to relaunch your leadership career today with only your character and relationships, how would you begin?
I would have started the Catalytic Leadership podcast 20 years ago. We're in our 4th season now, and it has given me the ability to have conversations with people and learn from people that I would never have any other opportunity to do that with. I would do that. That's the very first thing I would do. And I would take those relationships that I've retained, and I would use those relationships to start those conversations, because I believe that is key to long-term success. It's the people that you know, it's the relationships that you have.
So true. I mean, relationships is key, I think, and to grow, definitely. Okay, so what's one belief about leadership you wish more people understood?
That leadership is a choice. That you get to choose what kind of leader you're going to be. It's not hardwired into you. It's not pre-decided or predetermined. You get to choose it.
Love it, love it. And last question, a book, mentor, or teaching that has shaped the way you lead?
I would say John Maxwell has probably shaped my thinking more than just about anybody else in the leadership space. To have the opportunity to read so many of his books, to learn from him personally, it's a gift.
Love it, love it. William, it's been amazing. Where can people connect with you, learn more about the Appreciation at Work, what you're doing right now, or listen to the Catalytic Leadership podcast? Where can they find more about you?
John, thanks so much for having me on. You can go to appreciationatwork.com to find out more about what we're doing with Appreciation at Work and helping companies and teams to leverage appreciation to build healthy and sustainable cultures. For all things catalytic, you can go to catalyticleadership.net. You can find connections to the podcast there, the coaching that I do, the speaking that I do. Would love to connect with any of your listeners.
That's amazing. Hey, thank you so much for being on our podcast. And you have been such a great inspiration and just golden nuggets that we've been hearing today. Really appreciate you.
John, I appreciate you, man. Thanks so much for having me.